So it's the end of 2020, and obviously most of those New Year's resolutions we had at the beginning of the year got cancelled very quickly for obvious reasons. But besides having to cancel the plans due to the pandemic and whatnot, the sad thing is most of us would have cancelled our New Year's resolutions within the first month anyway. Statistically, 80% of us will give up on our resolutions by February. That is crazy. And whether you set yourself New Year's resolutions or not, I'm sure at some point in your life you will want to achieve certain goals. So this video is for you too. It goes without saying, 2020 has been a crazy year and a tough year for a lot of people. So before you start making plans for the year ahead, which could easily change or go down the drain, by the way, let's try and work on a method that can help your resolutions go a long way. So what's the problem? Why is it that most people give up on their New Year's resolutions? Well, it has to do with the way our brains are wired. Let's say you decide to start something new, like learn how to play the piano or a guitar this year. You get this dopamine hit at the beginning, but that quickly fades away after a little while. And it's the same dopamine you would get from picking up your mobile phone to maybe check your social media or from eating junk food. But with activities such as playing a new instrument, that actually requires deep focus, not just this short-lived dose of dopamine. Dopamine comes and then it quickly fades away. And when it does fade away, you lose interest, you ditch that plan, and then you want to try something new, something else that you can get that dopamine hit from, something like junk food, for example. But let's step back for a moment and try to understand exactly what dopamine does. Basically, it's the feel-good hormone. It gives us pleasure and a sense of reward. And the thing is, taking on something like playing an instrument doesn't really give us that instant gratification. The reward of playing an instrument well enough actually seems very far away. It's not instant. And so once we get busy and the motivation we had at the beginning goes away, we begin this negative self-talk. And boom, before we know it, the resolution is down the drain. So now that we know the one thing that causes us to not follow through with our resolutions and our plans, let's discuss a possible solution. Whether you are aware of it or not, we are beings of habits. Your daily activities are governed by your subconscious. So imagine if you had to think about eating every day. That would be like walking on your hands while brushing your teeth. That'd be horrendous. Right, I know it's a very random analogy, but you get my point here. Most of our behaviors and actions, good or bad, on autopilot, we do them without thinking. Those are the habits. A habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. So before we go further, answer this question. What's the first thing you did when you woke up this morning? Okay, perhaps something you reached for. Be honest. Pause and think about it if you have to. Did you think your phone? I bet you did. And if you didn't, maybe you're probably thinking, oh yeah, actually, probably a phone. The reason we are quick to pick into our phones is that it's a habit. And in many cases, a bad one, but obviously not always a bad habit, because sometimes you could just be turning off your alarm. So how can we use our understanding of habits to come up with New Year's resolutions that we will actually be able to keep? But we have to try and make the behaviors required to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve become automatic. We want to not have to think too much about those activities that we need to be doing, so they have to become effortless. The topic of habits by itself is a big one, so I won't be able to touch on everything in this video. But for now, let's briefly look at what makes up a habit, and then I'll share some tips on how to take advantage of that. So a habit consists of 3 building blocks, which are cue, routine, and reward, according to Duhhig, who's the author of The Power of Habit. Really good book. A cue is an event that causes you to react, and it's important that I say react here because that's what it is. It really is a reaction. And sticking with the analogy of looking at our mobile phones, ever notice how your eyes are quick to gaze at your phone screen whenever a notification sound goes off? That ping is the cue causing you to react. The routine then is the actual action, that is picking up your phone. And the reward is the satisfaction you get when you act on that notification that just came in on your phone. So a habit is made up of all these 3 components. So keep those in mind as we go along, because I'll be referring to this. In this quest to achieve your New Year's resolutions, the New Year, New Me scenario, It's worth picking one of the achievements you wish to accomplish for the year ahead and look at the activities, the small activities that you will need to do. I'll use an example of learning a new skill or a new hobby. A starting point is to aim to do the small things. Aim to practice the piano for 10 minutes each day for a start, rather than aiming for long stretches of practice that you are likely to ditch down the line. Because what we are trying to do here, we're trying to make this a habit. You want to maintain doing the activity frequently rather than how long you do it for. So the length at this point doesn't matter. Try and avoid having to use self-control or discipline to create a new habit of this new thing that you're trying to achieve. Instead, what you need to do is create the right environment that will help you stick to it. A perfect example of this is when you're trying to break the habit of eating sugary items with the intention of losing weight. You will need to get rid of all those cookies or those cakes from your kitchen first and foremost, and maybe place fruits on your kitchen counter. Then that way you don't have to rely on your willpower to resist eating the cookie. Instead, what you're likely to do is maybe pick a fruit which is healthier from your fruit bowl. And in many cases, you will eat a cookie or a cake that you've seen in the kitchen, not because you needed it, but just because you've seen it. Our brains have vision sensory neurons more than any other senses, and so what we see is more powerful in influencing our habits. And it's also the same reason we buy out of impulse when you're queuing at the checkout point in a store. It's because you'd have seen that item on the shelf that made you pick it up and put it into your basket, but not necessarily because you needed it. Supermarkets know this, and other retailers know this very much, and that's why they put items right there by the checkout area. So to break the habit of eating sugary items, you have to be aware that the cookie you'd have seen is the cue that triggers the routine of eating it, and then you get the reward from the pleasure on your taste buds. And that is the makeup of the entire habit. To learn an instrument, you want to practice it more frequently, obviously. So it will be easier then to place your guitar stand in the middle of the living room, where you will be able to see it all the time and then pick it up and play more frequently. Remember, the objects we interacted with in our environment trigger certain habits. A bed will usually cue sleeping time. Sitting on the couch in the evening could be a cue to watch TV. And so the more you see that guitar and pick it up, the more it will become a cue to practice. The final point I want to make on this journey regarding building good habits and breaking bad ones is to have someone to hold you accountable. This could be a close friend or a partner, and you could even consider joining a group or a club of people with shared interests. And if it's going to the gym, get a gym buddy. And to make it even more exciting, maybe throw in a reward for reaching a set target or a punishment for skipping a workout. When people know there will be severe consequences of not following through with something, they learn quickly. And the more immediate the consequences are, the less likely the behavior. So to change the behavior, sometimes we actually need to punish those behaviors. It's in the same way governments put in laws with the fine and penalty points for speeding, as an example. And it's quite a shame that some of us will work hard to meet the deadlines of our bosses at work, but not much when it comes to our own desires. And it's understandable, because we can easily slack off if there's no one looking over our shoulders. So share your resolutions with a good friend, a spouse, a relative who can motivate you and remind you to keep the momentum going. Lastly, your identity comes with the repetition of the behaviors you believe in. You become a writer by writing frequently. You become a pianist by playing frequently. So my challenge to you going forward into the new year is that set yourself your identity first. And here's the thing, people change. You are different from what you were 10 years ago. Things you identify with and believe in change. You mature and you learn from previous experiences. And the fact is, you will change over the next coming years. So then it's up to you what you do, how you behave, what habits you practice over the next few years to shape the person you will be in 10 years' time. And it's the small things. Decide the type of person you want to be and prove it to yourself with those little small wins and small actions that will become a part of you and part of your identity. Go through those small daily wins that will lead to your bigger desires. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors for the year to come. And most importantly, I wish you safety and good health. Peace out.